Thank you for joining us on Wednesdays.
It has been a great experience.
We've analysed, we've segmented, we've priced, and we've positioned,
Sliced and diced.
Stop the silos.
Gave practical advice.
Went all business and leisure.
We talked a lot about recovery best practices. Now it's time to put revenue management back into focus.
Let us help you become future-proof hotelier.
We will share our best practices and advice with you, starting from the beginning.
revenue hacks, back to basics.
Revenue hacks, back to basics.
Revenue hacks, back to basics.
Revenue hacks, back to the basics.
Revenue hacks, back to basics.
Welcome to Revenue Hacks, to our 7th episode. Amazing. So our subject today is going to be revenue management and their key task. Welcome to everybody who is on LinkedIn Live, on YouTube. Please keep posting your questions and comments for the whole journey. So for now, let's start with some introduction. I'm Benedict, founder of Certain Logic. We provide sales consultancy to the hoteliers for the new tomorrow. And now to my colleagues with me, let's go and introduce ourselves.
Okay, I'll go the next. My name is Olga Sommer. I'm an award-winning hotelier, revenue consultant, also mentor, and St. Julian Scholars Committee member.
Cool. Hi, I'm Bea. I'm the founder of MyOC, which is a consulting company specialized in optimization of revenue and processes for hotels. Today, I'll be helping you offline, actually, answering all your questions on LinkedIn. So please feel free to send some over.
Hi, I'm Christine. I'm the Group Revenue Manager for JMK, UK and Ireland-based hotel.
I'm Suzanne Williams. I'm the Revenue and Systems Director at Journey, a luxury marketing agency in Cheltenham.
Fantastic. So thank you very much. And let's go to the topics for today. So the topics for today, Christina.
Yeah, here we go.
Lovely. Thank you. It's going to be great. So next slide, please. Okay, so topic for today. First of all, we're going to look at what difference does it make if you're actually based on property or if you are based on head office looking after a few properties. Then we will move on into the different tasks. So we want to focus on what a revenue manager will be doing daily, weekly, monthly, and the big, enormous task for on an annual basis. So maybe starting really with the place, wherever your revenue management is based, does it make a difference for the task? What are your views on that? Maybe Christina, do you want to start?
Yeah, having worked in hotels and actually in a corporate office for a very long time, your tasks do differentiate on a day-to-day basis because a hotel is more clued into the property itself, whereas corporate, you're almost on a holistic view and you're always kind of looking things from the outside in rather than the inside out. And I think it's really important that you have good revenue managers in place in your properties that's able to do the daily tasks and feed back the important information to you in your corporate office so that you can make the necessary strategic decisions along with the marketing team, along with the operations team, or even group heads. I do think the daily basis, your reports look different. Your activities look different, I know mine do anyways, for sure. I'm unsure about everybody else in the panel though.
I can probably give a slightly different viewpoint here because Journey is a marketing agency, and actually, you know, having worked, I mean, a long time in hotels, operationally, rooms, sales, marketing, the whole shebang, and now to move over to the agency side, it's fascinating to see the difference. In the agency, where you're dealing with, we kind of do full plug and play almost, where you've got everything all set up in the agency. So hotels that work with us, we do full outsourced revenue management, the digital marketing, the social, content styling, the whole strategic piece, as well as deal with the day-to-day. So it's quite an interesting mix, and actually outsourcing everything where you've got, you know, we're a big office and there's a lot of energy, and that's where there's so much skill in that office that when we come together, we come up with some real innovation that I think you don't necessarily get at hotel level, because they're separate and they deal with their separate departments, but they're so focused on the kind of commercial outcomes that you get distracted, I think, at hotel level. You know, you get pulled into operations, you know, there's all sorts of things that go on. So it's not quite corporate and it's not quite hotel, it's somewhere in the middle.
But Susan, maybe one question for you is, and I guess this is what happened when you're based in a head office looking after a few properties. How do you prioritize? Because you are looking after quite a number of properties. So where do you put your resources?
Well, I think that we're lucky in the fact that we've got different departments, and one of the departments that I'm most grateful for at Journey are our client success team. So it gives me and my team the ability to really focus on the strategy and get right into the numbers and make sure that everything, we're following everything that to the best of our ability, whereas the client success team communicate and deal with any client issues that arise. It's not quite as diverse. We got on with the work, client success manage the relationship, and when we come to pull the strategy together, we all come together and there's a lot of energy that sits behind it. So it's just a slightly different setup. My priorities are always, you know, in the office, I'm absolutely focused on getting the results. I don't have to worry about all the fluff that sits around that. We're determined, that's the outcome, we're going for it. And then client success have to manage the client expectations and then how they input into that. And it works. I much prefer to work like that.
I think I have in my career, having worked in the on-site on property, as well as in a corporate office and managing multiple properties, similar to Christina, I've seen actually quite big differences, and mainly because you do everything, but on a slightly different scale. It's kind of a bigger picture view, but also number of stakeholders you're dealing with kind of really multiplies. You are dealing with, could be global, regional sales, marketing, e-commerce teams, you have finance, you have legal teams. So there is definitely much more communication. Goes back to communication, number of reports, which Christina mentioned. There are a number of additional reports that you expect to produce, even on a month-end basis, and also responsibilities. So you could be managing maybe £20 million budget property. If you have a region, it could be 120. And then you have a team already to manage, could be 15 people, could be 20. If you're a cluster revenue manager and you have 5 or 10 hotels in your cluster, then it means that you need to do your daily calls, which you would expect to do in the morning. But even if you spend 15 minutes with them, it takes quite a while to get through them. So there are definitely some significant variances I'm seeing, at least in my practice, between corporate and on-site property revenue manager. What's the ideal number of properties per revenue manager? In your view?
I don't think there is one. In my previous job before I joined this group, I actually had 86 different properties when I was working with Best Western at one stage. So there's a lot of properties. And I think it's down to the person individually, how many you can handle, and your time management is key. As Olga says, you do need to have your daily calls. You have to have your weekly calls, and your weekly calls can go on for about an hour. It depends on if the GM likes to talk or if the GM doesn't like to talk. And, we're finding now a lot more GMs are getting more revenue involved to a certain degree, but also some people just like to be heard and like to talk all the time. And I just feel like sometimes it can go off topic, so you just need to stick to it. And I am so regimental. I'm almost like a robot. I can tell you exactly the time I'll have each task completed, except for when someone throws a spanner in the works, like a magical meeting or some sort of extra budget that they need for refinancing or something like that. I'm sure everyone is the same though.
So it also depends on, it also depends on the size of the property, because if it is, I don't know, 50 bedrooms and 800 or 600 bedrooms with multiple market segments and strategy behind each of them, it really depends how many you can manage and also how much of the detail you want to go. So there is definitely a limit.
Yeah, but the process, I mean, laying out, so Journey has over 300 hotels. So when I'm looking at, revenue, I'm thinking how many of those hotels can we service? And I've laid it all out, like Christina, how many tasks we can do each day, what the communication is, how often we have to have meetings, so that we can see exactly how full our diary is. But it's really, I mean, it's planned to, the 5-minute mark. It's quite something.
Yeah, but also if you expected to attend revenue meetings on a weekly basis on property, if you have 3 hotels, that's 3 days you need to spend outside your office, let's say. So it changes, and then you have all the actions, all the minutes, follow-ups, etc. So the dynamics is very different.
I think the important thing is using your diary. Use it. Make sure you have it in there. Make sure everyone has access to it, and don't leave a meeting out, because I actually would spend 3 days in the UK and 2 days here in Ireland, and I'd be in Waterford every week or every second week. So I'm actually almost like a remote group revenue manager, where I'm constantly, I'm online all the time, and that's where you need to be able to switch off as well and be able to kind of work on the basis that you're constantly rolling. So if I'm sitting in the airport, I'm working on stuff I need to get done on the macro, because I don't focus on the micro. That's up to the hotels to do. And obviously I'll drill into it every now and then just to make sure that they are doing everything correctly, and I'll just do sporadic checks. But as a corporate RM, you're kind of looking at it, as I said, more holistically and on the macro level, so that you can communicate the information to the stakeholders, as Olga said, because sometimes hotels can't communicate that information correctly, or they're not, they can't put presentations together correctly. And that's the important thing, that when you're delivering numbers in particular, you need to be 110% certain, because there's no way you can be black. It has to be black and white. There's no gray in between when it comes to financial numbers.
So today is our second episode dedicated to fundamentals. So could we start with looking at the task? I think, Susan, you're going to present us the daily ones, and in the same time explaining some of the terms that may sound very basic to some of us, but I think it would be great to explain what they mean really.
Yeah, so I think the daily tasks, actually, when you've got your daily processes sorted, then your weekly and your monthly, everything flows quite nicely and you can stay fairly organised. So one of the most important tasks, and actually the most useful for our hotels that we work with, and most hotels, I've put this daily pace in place. It's the most useful report. So your daily pace, when you're looking 365 days ahead at your rate and your occupancy, where you can see whether they're aligned, you can see what's picked up from the previous day. It gives you the opportunity to adjust your pricing strategy if needed. And it just gives a top line view. You summarise it on the front page for directors, owners, that they can see, are they on pace for the month? How far away they are from budget? And then they can dig into the detail if needed. So that's my absolute favourite report. Our team produce daily pace reports for all of our hotels, and it's invaluable. So looking at your cancellations, that's quite broad. I actually fit my cancellations into a revenue management diary, and as part of that revenue management diary, and it can be front office, reservations, or your revenue manager that fills this in, but to me, collecting the detail on a daily basis in a revenue management diary really gives you the weekly, monthly picture. And when it comes to those annual tasks, looking back to see exactly what happened day by day is just invaluable. When you wonder, well, why did my rate fall off a cliff? It could be the weather, it could be the volcanoes erupting, all sorts of things have happened in the past that, snowstorms that you don't necessarily record anywhere. So for me, the revenue management diary, where we look at, I've got a list, so I'll just go through it. Out of order rooms and out of service rooms, are we recording them? Is it noted down? Are you taking rooms out your inventory? The rooms you have to sell at 9 o'clock in the morning, if you're in quite a fast-paced environment, I want to know whether my rate or demand, what's driving that pickup. I want to see what picks up through the day, how quickly the rooms sell, can I push my rate, what's my last room value, and all those kind of things that feed into that. The number of vacant rooms, how many vacant rooms have you got? the unsold rooms for the same day of the week last year, that's something that I look at on a daily basis. I want to know whether we're trending as well as we should be, and that's something my team pull together. Your 2 p.m. releases, your cancellations, what's going to happen if 50% of your occupancy drops out at 2 p.m? Have you got an overbooking policy in place? What's it set at? What price is it? What's your unyieldable segments within that cancellation policy? The number of walk-ins, that happened yesterday. How many people walked in? What rate did they pay? I know these things are. These are the simple back to basics tasks that every revenue manager should be going through on a daily basis. Your occupancy, your net revenue, your total revenue, your achieved RevPAR from the day before, your total RevPAR. What other comments can you add into that mix? Like we said earlier, the weather, anything exceptional that happens, note it down. So that's covering that's your cancellations, your business on the books, your unusual pickup by segment is your last room value, anything that spikes. I think the thing about your pace is when you're looking at the whole year, every single day, it really immediately flags any issues that you've got with rate or occupancy, including cancellations, group washdowns. It flags to say, investigate this date, what's happened, and it just draws your attention. It takes 10 minutes in the morning, and it's really worth doing. So, and that covers your forecast for your months as well. I forecast by segment, source and channel every week, so it doesn't fit into my daily. My daily pace is my absolute go-to for everything we do rate-wise. Your top opportunities for future-based demand comes from your daily pace. So it doesn't have to be a huge cumbersome task, but these simple reports, your daily pace, your revenue management diary, and keeping everyone briefed on your rate strategy and your restrictions, that's the absolute back to basics for your daily tasks.
Lovely. What are the best practice to communicate? I mean, especially when you have quite a number of hotels to look after, what would be the best practice to do?
We're actually looking at the moment at a data studio and how we extract information out of PMS systems and having it on a platform so that hotels will be able to just dial in and see everything that we see on a daily basis. But at the moment, we send out our daily pace with the summary and our commentary on it every single morning before 10 o'clock. So you want to know what's happening in your business, it will be in your inbox by 10 o'clock with any exceptions, any flags, and then we follow that up weekly. So owners don't necessarily want to see, 3 months ahead, you've dropped 3 rooms, but I want to see that. They see it on the summary page. And if they want to dig into any more detail, we do that on a weekly call.
Mm-hmm. So we had a question from Stacy that disappeared really quickly. Not Stacy, but the question. And it's, yes, well, you can see it. So you mentioned the revenue diary. Is this digital or on paper?
It's on paper, progressing to digital. We're progressing it. It's an evolution, but we're working quite hard on pulling all the information so we've got a fully digitized reporting platform for our hotels. And hi, Stacey.
Do you have any best practice? And it's a link with this Stop the Silos theme that we have since the beginning of our episode. But do you have any best practice, Christina or Olga, on how to communicate with the hotels?
I think for me, the most important thing is obviously, as Susan said, that you're actually tracking all this information, you're sharing it, because we have to share it with everyone. So everyone should know, especially marketing managers and GMs, where your business is coming from, what's producing, what's not producing, so that they can actually go back and, contact that corporate or contact that agent who's promised you X amount of rooms, or group wash in particular, so that everyone has that touch point on the business and everyone is learning with you while you're learning about it, because it does help at the end of the year when you're writing your forecasts, your budgets, you're writing, your corporate plans, your strategic plans. And that just kind of gives everyone that basis. It's about sharing knowledge now. It's no such thing as holding on to that knowledge yourself, because we're all indispensable.
Yeah, I think one of the things about that, Christina, sorry, Olga, is that
right.
see when you're in the hotel setting, you've got a revenue manager there. If you are a revenue manager, walk in the door and speak to reception. Ask them what's the ADR variance against budget. Ask them what the occupancy variance is, because that's again, it's part of your revenue daily tasks. But by challenging your front office. My old boss, who shall remain unnamed, when I was very young, used to walk in every single day and challenge me on all these things. And if I didn't know, well, I won't tell you what happens, but it's important to just continually challenge. And I think that people get excited by that.
Yeah, I think it's also a very good way to train, whether it's reservations manager or group reservations managers. Daily pickup or paste report is crucial. I agree with Suzanne. It's really important. There's so much information. If I see any abnormalities, let's say group change the market segment because it will wash from one and you will see it picking up from another, I will question straight away and the email will go to several departments. So I think that it's part of the culture. You need to develop it. Anything that is kind of sticks out and you want to question, you should ask really and question. And it will, you with time gradually develop knowledge within your departments and HODs and teams. And that's what you'll have really developed then the culture of revenue management within the whole hotel. I mean, yes, there are so many great ways of communication. It can be telephone, it can be email, 10 a.m. Meeting, which usually happens in properties. It really depends on each individual property and the setup in that place.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So should we move on to the weekly task now? And I think it's with you, Olga.
Thank you. Yeah, so weekly tasks, some of it, of course, information kind of feeds straight away from the daily task. But for me, key task on a weekly basis was forecast because a lot comes out of it. So the forecast I would do absolutely minimum, depending on the time constraints, I would do minimum 1 month plus 2. So this next 3 months is crucial. And I would do it the same as Suzanne by segment, by day, ADR and occupancy. Depending what reports and system you're using, if you have it broken down by what was the last week's forecast and where you are now, and also what your RMS is suggesting as well. That's an interesting one. I would usually go through that before submitting forecast or before even starting. I would always, if you keep an eye on your daily pickup, you kind of almost get an understanding or feel as well before you go to the forecast. If you've seen continuous wash for Q4, you know that you need to pay attention this week and possibly change some of your forecasts for that particular period of time. But I would certainly meet with DOS, definitely with groups reservations manager, depending how much group segment you have and how much of proportion of business it is, as well as individual reservations, because you want to gather understanding. These are the people who have information more than you do. So it's important to ask also if there are any large pieces of business that you haven't received contracts yet. So they're not in this system. So this system will not pick it up for you, but someone on site might know, will share information that the contract is coming back, let's say tomorrow or in a few days' time. And there are some signs definitely that group is going ahead or that large piece of business, which means you need to make changes already now in your pricing and strategy and maximize on those opportunities. And equally, if you see a wash, you better make the changes in your strategy. You could be releasing rooms back to the inventory back. You could be opening up or releasing some of the restrictions you have previously placed to increase the revenue. Using those yielding tools kind of to maximize on the opportunities, also potentially to gain more business if you see it's a challenging period of time. And also during the forecast, I would always do 12 months. So it could be top line by segment. I was very fortunate to work with some reports that also did forecast versus budget and versus last year. So it gives a really good overview because there is no, second year exactly the same. So it's really good to have that analysis as well. And that gives understanding of the market trends and changes. Then after that, communication to HODs, to financial controllers, to operations teams, because they need to know what are the occupancy levels, number of people we expect, and especially right now when we're talking more about P&L, the cost of sale, and going, to recovery from COVID-19, it will be important to understand how much you need to order food, what are your, how many staffing levels you need to have in place, and so on and so forth. From the forecast, I would also make changes to the pricing straight away. So within the first current months and the future months, that I would do them straight at the same time. If there are time constraints, I would make a list of the changes and would come back to do, let's say, maybe late in the day or the following day. And then make sure that I communicate to the departments, and that revenue forecast will be used also for the revenue meeting as well, which is on this list. So revenue meeting is your opportunity to communicate to all departments what's happening with the strategy, what are the key events, what changes you made in the strategy. I would always include also sales and marketing activities. commentary, minutes, activities from the last week. During the week, I would also follow up who's with the person who's responsible for each task, so I can give full overview on the revenue meeting. Also, once a week, I would meet separately with group reservations manager, because possibly for that property, it was 40% of the business, because we created a group pricing sheet. So the team of 5 or 7 people, they didn't have to check with revenue manager directly all the time. With every single inquiry, it would be impossible. So we created the revenue pricing sheet for the reservations team, for groups reservations team. So we would make sure that the pricing, if we're making any changes for the retail segment, that our group's pricing is aligned as well. Yeah, that's pretty much revenue meeting, groups demand and pricing and the forecast. These are the main kind of key points, and a lot comes out of it in terms of activities for that week comes from those really key points.
Can I just highlight something? I just wanted to highlight something about the forecast, and especially when we're looking ahead at the cost of acquisition. I think that including your distribution channels in your forecast, so your forecasting by segment and distribution channel is massively important. And it kind of, Stacey's asked another question just about collaboration. So you can think a little bit outside the box when you're looking at what your channels are. You can go traditional, your direct, your GDS, your OTs, etc. But you can also include your paid media and your paid publications. So if you're with Pets Pajamas and you've spent so much money on this publication, you can track that business and let's see it on the forecast, so that when you come to make decisions about marketing spend for the next year, has this spend actually generated any sales, and how do you know? So if you look at your distribution channels and think about exactly what you want to track, I would certainly be doing that on a weekly basis.
Yeah, well, I think in the past we tracked any, not necessarily ad campaigns, but mainly, although that was maybe on a monthly, but any campaigns that are sales and marketing campaigns, and how much it's producing, we would track it and leave it in the commentary in the forecast. So the following week, we could see how much additional it created. So it's a good forecast. It depends how many options you have, but I would always have a commentary that would include that as well. Absolutely.
And actually just one final thing on this, talking about stopping the silos and making everyone collaborative. When you're looking at your forecast like that and you actually have the marketing plan, then you can show the spikes in that pickup, and when revenue know what's about to hit from a PR perspective or a paid ad campaign, then you'll know where to target your digital spends. You want your PR campaign to go out, you want to then amplify it through digital, and you want to track it by revenue. And I think that collaboration is where the big impact is. That's how you show actual sales conversion, which ultimately is what it's all about.
A question for you, Suzanne. Would you include the cost of sale into your forecast? Thank you, Anna, for the question.
Not in the forecast, but I would certainly include it in a monthly task from a P&L rooms review and do the reporting there.
Yeah, and possibly then budget your sales activity for the next year or current year. It's definitely should be part of it.
Christina, anything you would like to add on this long list of tasks? Do you do anything additional?
For me, it's the collaboration. Forecasts should be reviewed on once a week. And normally what happens is, I've worked in fantastic companies who've had really good ethic when it came to forecasts, where you do the forecast, you'd submit it, but you'd actually copy in GM, the corporate office, sales team, anyone who was supposed to get this forecast. And in there would have been the Excel sheet, but also would have compared it to this time last year, pacing wise, budget numbers from last year, everything. But also there was a really good commentary in there where it actually broke it down per segment: growth in ADR, growth in room nights, loss in room nights, why, and everything had that. So we used to keep everything on either a binder, actually print it out each week, which was quite hefty, or we'd actually keep it in a file, like a Dropbox file. It allowed us then to actually be able to tell everything, tell the story when it came to budget writing. And I think one of the tasks that we used to do was constantly looking at that towards the budget. So when we finished a month, we were almost able to write a new budget for next year, and then kind of like, tweak it as we were going along, because a lot of these tasks always feed into the future. And your pricing strategy doesn't have to be a weekly thing. If you're starting to see spikes, because obviously we're all coming out of COVID, make sure you start looking at this on an ongoing basis. I think that's really important to do too.
So we had a question from Nelly, which I think we probably answer more than once now, but does the revenue manager get involved in setting up room prices. So I think we said yes, yes, and yes. But who else should be involved in the property or in the corporate environment?
The GMs.
GMs for sure, yeah. And sales need to be involved to a certain degree, especially in rooms, because obviously they need to know what they're selling. And they need to know the price point of what they're selling, especially when it comes to groups, corporate agreements, and all them type of items. It's really important that everyone kind of sings harmoniously together rather than having different stories from each person.
Lovely. Great. Should we move on now to the monthly task? And this is with you, Christina.
Yeah, so monthly tasks. We're always looking at business on the books for the next 12 months. So we need to be looking ahead. As Olga said, she usually does this on a weekly basis. Sometimes I actually do it as well. At the moment, because of COVID, we're actually tracking it every second day just to see what's moving, in particular because we're seeing 2021 spiking in a lot of places. You're reviewing the segments as well for the forecast on an ongoing basis for 12 months. So you're looking at the segment distribution channels, what's working for you, what's not working for you, where do you think you need to pull it back if you've had mass cancellations in groups or you've had big pickup in groups to add it into the segments. You're preparing your month-end reports. So important you stick to your deadlines. I know we're always saying we're so busy and we need to focus. We need to get these done on time and we need to have them in so that the P&L can be reflected as well, because that P&L is always very important. It tells a great story to the corporate office and tells a great story to you in the hotel about the cost of acquisition on a room. You need to review obviously key opportunities for the next 12 months and obviously your pricing strategy. Constantly looking ahead, do you think your corporates are going to grow a lot more? Do you think there's room to increase a corporate rate if they're on a dynamic rate or a flexible rate? That's up for review. And obviously you're constantly looking at production of segments, track that every month, track how many rooms you got from an OTA, how many travel agency rooms or FIT rooms you got, so that you can actually go back, either you or sales can go back and speak to your clients and ask, well, why aren't you producing your corporate agreement says X or your travel agreement says Y? And you can either, renegotiate, or else you can cut ties with these if you need to in the future. Always check your events for the future. What has been announced? What is been cancelled? Where it's coming from? What's going on? Make sure you actually extend out your rate codes as well. So a trick that we have in a lot of our hotels is that sometimes some of the rate codes are only valid for a certain amount of time. So we'll always try and move them out an extra month so that we're not, a lot of the properties, the brands only allow you to sell 365 days out or even 330 in some cases. So we're constantly looking at all these different tweaks that need to be made. And even at that, you might need to, for a winter period, tweak your discounts, especially advanced purchase or any minimum length of stay rates that you need to check as well. Just constantly review what's going on in your property. That's the only thing I could say. And make sure you feed back the correct information to everyone. You need to have the say in what's going on in your property when it comes to revenue. So if your GM isn't actually a rooms biased GM, then you need to start really training this person and get them focused on the segments and getting them understanding where your business is coming from so that they can make the correct decisions as well in the future and relay that information to the corporate office.
What's the best source of information for future events, Christina? Where do you get the information from?
So we actually have a calendar that we have, but we actually put in, we've got Google Alerts pretty much set up for everything in any part of the country that we're actually based in, or hotels. We regularly check the likes of the big arenas or the big sports stadiums, their web pages, because a lot of the time there'll be, different events and stuff like that popped in there, or the CCD here in Dublin that you wouldn't really know about. So we're constantly tracking that. It's not time consuming. It's probably a 10-minute job, but at least it keeps everyone up to date on what's going on. And then obviously you can set your pricing strategy out against that. Or if you start to see a large influx in corporate group inquiries or ad hoc inquiries, then there's something definitely going on around them dates as well.
Mm-hmm. Anything to add, Susan or Olga, on this monthly task?
I think what's so fascinating about the daily, weekly and monthly is that we're only even now just covering, say, 50 or 60% of what we do on a day-to-day basis. We're not touching on, the vast array of tools in terms of restrictions and Redmond Max. And, it's just, it makes me feel nostalgic about being back on property. It's great. Yeah, it's good.
So, tell us more about that. That's interesting. We have not really talked about systems and what is key to keep updated for you. What do you use?
I use my eyes and my PMS. I look at all the rates that we've got open, what the restrictions are, what room types are open, making sure the sale through's there, looking for the peaks back to the daily pace again, looking at your weekly segmentation, all of it. It just, when you're looking every day at your daily, weekly tasks, as we've outlined here, it just gives you so much more to work with, and you work in a far more organised, strategic way. It's not kamikaze. You're going through the process, and it's not subjective. These are things that should be done as part of the revenue management job, and it keeps you on top of your game, I think.
Mm-hmm. So are you saying, because it looks like you're spending time on your PMS, so does it mean the revenue managers needs to have a really good understanding of the technology used, yeah?
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I'm feeling nostalgic, because I don't look at the PMS every day anymore. My team do that. But yes, you know, when I get involved and I'm kind of like, let's see what's going on in the system, my team roll their eyes and be like, where she goes, you know, and I'll be there for hours looking at all the rates and what's restricted and whether our rate strategy is working and how the forecast looks, because you can see the impact. You can see those dates where you've hit budget and what segment's happening and what campaigns you've driven. It's just the best thing.
So what would you say for a revenue manager coming in, not too sure about the technology? Maybe it's a technology which has been chosen before they came in, or they're not very tech orientated because that's pretty new for them, maybe. What would be your tips to get really a good understanding of what's available? What do they need to watch out?
100%. Get right into your PMS in any system, your distribution channels, your extranets and your PMS. That's where the information sits. Know everything about it, challenge it, look to see what can be configured, what suits your strategy, get amongst it, learn properly and spend time in front office.
Yeah, I would say also price shopping tools, because I remember old days when you would go bookings.com and check what your competitors are selling. Thankfully, those days are behind us. Christine remembers that time clearly.
Oh my God, yeah.
The systems are not perfect. If the price shopping is done over the night, then it's completely irrelevant. There are tools right now that will give you instant search for the next whatever period of time you want to check. Again, there are some discrepancies. We talk very often about price differences. Sometimes you'll find rates slightly cheaper than brand website. So it's a good point to check those. Try to do test shopping as well if needed. So for me, that's a vital tool. That also provides information to see what competitors, whether increasing, decreasing rates, which they shouldn't be. But anyway, that's the reality. So for me, price shopping tools, the good ones, they save a lot of time. Also, revenue management systems, again, it takes time to get the good suggestions, even on the pricing from your revenue management system, but it gives us, it takes away kind of time that you need to analyze data, gives you lots of different reports, and frees up time to do more strategic decisions. But however, I should mention that it does require maybe a good couple of years to build a system to the point where it gives you actually good suggestions. Because what you're basically trying to do is to build your brain into the system. So you kind of, it's always will be lacking behind. And also those old enough who've been here in 2008, 2009, who've gone through the first, the initial crisis those times, I think we're much more prepared for this COVID-19 and this situation we're in. So as much as I rely on systems to a certain degree, I don't think certain skill and human element cannot be replaced really. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing forecasts on a weekly basis.
And that's very true. And I have to agree with Olga, just because I think there's a big question sometimes then, can we replace that person with a machine, even though the machine is probably a little bit cheaper than what the revenue manager is? No, because the system doesn't know everything that a revenue manager would see or know about a property itself. And I also think as well that when we're looking at it, you need to get trained. If you're moving into a property that has a system that you've never been trained on, don't be afraid to ask about it, get trained on it, because you will only know as much as you can by just looking at a screen. But if you actually invest in the training and time, there's so many YouTube videos out there now. The information is there. So many people want to share it. And that's really, really important, because if you don't know how the system is working correctly, well, then it's not going to work correctly for you and for the property, and that can lead to massive disasters, in regards to pricing, forecasting, and just in general its build. And I think also map out, create a virtual map that shows, how the information is flowed. So if it's flown from the PMS or else an RMS system out into the big bad world, and what rate codes are mapped to what particular room type. So you can actually then make them quick to strategic decisions in the future.
So we talked about sorry, Olga. We talked about the revenue manager being a collaborative. We talked about being a leader, and now we're adding another layer. Yeah, he needs to be as well a technical person who knows all his system, or she, and challenge the vendors. So it looks like we're adding episode after episode more skills, more and more demands on this role. So it's becoming really an exciting, really big job, exciting role. Olga, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I would like to say that what Christina mentioned about, learning the systems, I would like to think that because we are revenue leaders, I would like to think in hospitality, I would expect those trainings to be already in place as part of onboarding process. If they're not in place, I think it's one of the areas hoteliers could look at. And also it should be a big part of our roles as training and sharing our knowledge. And for me, that needs to be part of the training of onboarding process. And also you want to raise profile of revenue management culture within the hotel. And also you want to have a few allies in your teams who are interested in revenue management. They will be your eyes and ears, and the potential will grow into future revenue leaders as well.
Wonderful. So thank you very much. We're just going to finish off with the annual task. So we don't need to spend too much time on this one because we've got another episode where we're going to really dedicate time to that. But if I can just ask you as a last really sentence and finishing this episode, what would be your really key task on an annual basis that you would recommend for the revenue managers to spend time on?
Commercial strategy.
Yeah, Olga, okay.
Yeah, the first one, commercial sales, marketing, brand, and revenue strategy. You want to have a good picture by market segment, what it looks like, which market segments you're going after, how you will tackle them, who your key target audience. It could be part of the budget as well, but that kind of, I think it's bigger than a budget because budget is mainly for rooms. You want to have a bigger picture for all departments and all revenue streams, so not just the bedrooms. You want to overall, and that will include collaboration between sales, marketing, brand teams as well.
I have to agree with Olga, commercial strategy, because that would lead very much into your preparation for your budget. I know you've got budget now. Hopefully you'll have your weekly sheets that you're able to look at, and obviously kind of some mock-up of the budget done. But that allows you to actually review as well your rates, your packages, what works, what doesn't work, your corporate rates. Do you need to recontract with X, Y, and Z? Is it at a higher rate or a cheaper rate? And it also allows you to actually look at your marketing spends and your sales, who's doing what correctly, which allows then for a really good budget that should be pretty much, God forbid, ironclad without having COVID again.
I was just going to add one thing onto that because I totally agree. The accommodation commercial strategy is vital. I think that you can expand out on your commercial strategy and make sure that you're thinking about and including like your differentials within that. So you're looking at what are the potential to enhance your rooms, what was going to drive rates, what's going to drive what. I think you can get quite creative and keeping your revenue disciplines in there, but then working towards brand enhancements and what eventually is going to take that top line 5% expectation, which I'm sure will be put on your expected budget numbers, and how you're actually going to achieve it through guest review sites, what's going to happen there, how do you collect the information. I think you can really go down the mine on your accommodation strategy.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, ladies. We have now finished this episode. I would like to thank everybody for joining, for putting your questions, and thank you to Bea for handling the question online. For everybody, please carry on following us. Come back to us again next week. We're going to look at the competition analysis, and tomorrow there will be a fantastic new episode with Future of Gastronomy with the winner of 2019 MasterChef. So please join us, and then follow us on Instagram as well. We are everywhere. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.